Good morning, Husker fans, and welcome back to the Husker Big Red YouTube channel. I'm Chris Peterson, and joining me as always is Danny Gillette, my co-host, and we're back here on Wednesday morning, and today is the start of Nebraska football fall camp. So we'll break down some of our storylines and get into some of the other topics of conversation going on around Nebraska football. Before we do that, please make sure that you guys hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, check out HuskerBigRed.com. And Danny, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing all right. It's the end of July. We're approaching a football month. We got today's the 31st, so exactly 1 month until the opener against UTEP. I know you've played the opener in NCAA football 25, and my dynasty with Rice is not going good for anybody who cares. I took the job at Memphis, so now we're on to new beginnings in NCAA 25. But let's hope, like in NCAA 25, Nebraska can get the job done against UTEP. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's exciting to see, fall camp starting again. Seeing the guys back in the dorm rooms and stuff. I saw, some of the coaches posting pictures of that today. So, yeah, the real work begins. Summer workouts are done. Spring ball, all that stuff. We've been talking about this season for months now, and the work finally begins. Yeah, just a little over a month until that first game, and away we go. And I guess, as far as fall camp storylines go, I think we have to start with the quarterback position because that's, I think, the biggest storyline of this entire program. I mean, it was a huge storyline last year and the failures of the quarterback position and all the interceptions. And, Marcus Satterfield mentioned it yesterday. He said, if you turn the ball over, then you're not going to play. And we'll see how much, they live up to that, especially with Dylan Raiola. But I have a feeling that with the way Dylan Raiola throws the football, we're not going to have those interception problems and stuff like that. So I guess to round it back to this original point of the quarterback position, Matt Rule basically said, when it's clear, when everybody knows, they'll make an announcement. So what do you think is going to happen with this quarterback competition, and when do you think that we will finally hear that Dylan Raiola is the official starting quarterback in Nebraska?
My dog is barking, so I'll let you talk a little bit, and then we can answer the question.
Well, I guess as far as my thoughts on the quarterback competition, I know on Tuesday, they talked about Heinrich Harburg, and Marcus Satterfield talked about Heinrich Harburg, and she talked about, what a huge role he was going to be playing this season. And I've said all along that I do think that Harburg has a role as a wildcat type of quarterback, a running type of quarterback, a guy that can make defenses, play Nebraska a little bit differently running the football. But I don't think that he's a legitimate threat to, unseat Dylan Raiola as the starting quarterback. So essentially, it's just a matter, it's like Matt Rule said about when Nebraska will host a playoff, games with playoff implications again. It's a matter of when, not if. And I think it's a matter of when, not if, Dylan Raiola is named as the starting quarterback this week. So, or I guess wouldn't necessarily, be this week, but I do think that's going to happen in the next couple of weeks. I think it's delaying, the inevitable. I don't think that Jalen, Gramstad is going to factor into this race at all. I mean, maybe the backup race, but at this point, it's pretty clear to me, based on what the players said too. Talking to Teddy Prohashka and some of these other guys, like it's clear who the guy is on this team, and it's Dylan Raiola.
My dog was certainly excited about Dylan Raiola getting a starting opportunity potentially, but no, I think it's Dylan Raiola. I mean, you don't bring a guy in here that's a five-star quarterback to sit on the bench for too long anyway. And you look at his body of work, for example, just this year, what he's done in the Polynesian Bowl, and you looked at what he did during the spring game, and, I think it's Dylan Raiola. I mean, this is a guy that's ready for the challenge of being the starting quarterback for Nebraska. You can tell he's very confident in what he can do, and he says all the right things in the media. So, I think it's Dylan Raiola. And then Harburg, like you alluded to, there were some rumors that, could he unseat Dylan Raiola? I don't think so. I mean, maybe for like one or two games if Raiola struggles, but truthfully, I think the job is Raiola's to lose.
Yeah, I think that'd be crazy. Raiola is just such a better, he just has so much more talent, and it's clear, he's the guy to lead this program into the future. And I do, like I said, I do think that Heinrich can be used as a running type quarterback. I've never really seen him as much of a tight end, and especially with the way that the room is set up right now with Borkature and Fedoni, and I know Carter Nelson's not there, but I still think he's going to be played in a similar tight end wide receiver type of fashion. I think they're going to see
I think
him.
once Fedoni leaves, or once Fedoni, is no longer at the program, I think he could move to tight end. Because truthfully, we have a lot of wide receivers too. So
Yeah, we'll see how it all works out. And I do about tight end. I do believe that Ishmael Smith Flores. I think he's changed positions. I think he's moved over to linebacker. So I wanted to
yeah, he's on the
mention that.
defensive side now. Yeah.
But at any rate, I do, and I think that Carter Nelson is going to be utilized in that slot position quite a bit. I don't know that we're going to see him on the outside as much. I think it's going to be in that slot quite a bit, and we'll see how that works out. But I'm excited for him to get opportunities. And yeah, I think it's going to be Raiola, Carter Nelson. I think those are two freshmen that are both going to make big impacts this season. Ja'Cory Barney is another one. Defensively, I don't think there's going to be quite as many. I know Vincent Schaefer's is a name everybody's talked about. But even him, I think it's going to be harder once the season starts. But he did play quite a bit this spring, so I do think that he'll get into that rotation because you need 3 or 4 guys for those couple inside linebacker spots.
And when you look at just his overall skill set and his ability to come off the edge, rush the passer, things like that, Shavers is unique in that way, and he fits in the defensive scheme itself really well. So I don't think he's going to be sitting on the bench for long. I think he's going to be an impact playmaker, and he was impressive over the course of spring practices, and now he's showing some stuff as camp begins. So I think he's a name we hear very often. I know he was one of the mentions as one of the top off-season workers for the program. So that's encouraging too. And I think he has a chance to not only make an impact this year, but be a staple and a productive player of this defense for years to come.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see, how some of the other transfers, work into it too. Stephon Thompson, Micah Masuka. There's been some positive injury updates on Bly Hill, so I don't know that when we'll see him, but I think we will see him sooner rather than later. So I think that that's a positive thing. And then I guess in terms of the cornerback position, Tony White kind of talked about it, but Zaire Wright in that adjustment, it seems like there is always an adjustment when guys come to Nebraska. So we'll see how quickly he's kind of able to, get himself ready. But I did have him in my projected starting lineup for the Huskers when I did my 2D projections. So I feel like as long as Zaire Wright can kind of get, his sea legs, he's got a very good chance to play. And, another thing too is, Marcus Buford's played some cornerback before, some slot corner, so he may get into that mix. Malcolm Hartzog, I think there is more depth at safety at corner, so you kind of have to, roll with that Hartzog to corner. I think that's the break glass. If none of these other guys work, then you put Hartzog out there, and then maybe Buford kind of goes into that slot corner role. We'll see how it all works out. I think there's enough pieces there to make it work in the secondary, but you really can't, especially at cornerback, you cannot afford any injuries, and you really need Zaire Wright to be ready to go right away.
Yeah, you need him to be ready to go right away, and you also need production from some of the other spots as well, because I always say, a good defensive line makes a corner's life a lot easier. So I'll be interested to see how the defensive line and the corners feed off each other. And we know that the line itself is a very strong position group. So if they can make things easier for the corners, then that's good as well. Because the corners, I think, at least to start off, are definitely going to need a lot of help. And then, it's not like Nebraska doesn't have talent coming. They have Bryce Weber, and he's a really talented player. It's just more about continuing to build the corner room. And quite honestly, I think the coaching staff did a good job of building the corner room for this year with the time that they had, and of course the injury to Hill certainly put a damper on things.
Yeah, and we'll see. And then, Jaden Doss is another guy moved over there from, receiver to corner. So, Jeremiah Charles is another, name to know there.
Bryce Turner, I mean, I don't know where he stands in terms of how his development is going, but he also moved from wide receiver to corner. So could be something there.
Yeah, so that's definitely. I mean, that's one of the position battles to watch. I would say cornerback, quarterback. Just until Matt Rule names a starter, but I still think we know who the starter is going to be. And then I would say, running back, I think is going to be a really interesting, position battle to watch. And then I got my eye on the offensive line a little bit because, Matt Rule said that Turner Corcoran was ready to go, 100%, that he was 100% ready to go for fall camp. So, I mean, I think that opens up things on the interior. Really, you got Bryce Benhurt on the outside, Teddy on the outside on the left side. Those two guys are set. You have Ben Scott at center, and then I think those guard positions I think are kind of open. You got Justin Evan Jenkins, Mazuka. You got Turner Corcoran. You got Henry Liptowski. So I think there's a little bit of a battle in there, and I would be surprised if Turner Corcoran didn't work his way into the starting lineup. But who do you not start out of that group? So I feel like Nebraska's in a position where, kind of like Michigan last year, where you knew going into the season that you had 6 or 7 legitimate starters on the offensive line. You just couldn't play them all. And Michigan had guys getting hurt. Nebraska will have guys getting hurt too. So I think that offensive line depth is going to pay off. But I'm excited to see how that battle at guard kind of plays out with Evan Jenkins, Corcoran, and Mazuka there.
I really like Evan Jenkins. I thought he did a solid job last year in the time that he was given a play. And, you think about the offensive line even, I don't know, 2 years ago or 3 years ago, and you didn't have a ton of depth. Now we have the problem of who are we going to play because we have a lot of options. And that just speaks to the recruiting job that this coaching staff has done.
And speaking of, I don't know if you saw this, but I thought this was a great move by Dylan Raiola. Teddy Prohashka said that Dylan took the offensive lineman out for pizza, and they ran up the bill, and Dylan, used his NIL money to take care of it. So that's just a great savvy move, and I think that's reflection of his dad was an offensive lineman, so he knows what it takes to keep those guys happy, and so just a lot of savvy moves by Dylan Raiola, who I think has throughout this entire process has shown maturity beyond his years, and I think that's why he's ready to take the helm of this program and bring us back to where we should be in terms of just being a top 25 team, getting to bowl games, and all that type of stuff, getting Nebraska back to where it should be, in the conversation of national college football.
It's always a good idea to take care of the guys who are responsible at keeping you upright, because they can very easily miss a block as well. So no, not that they would ever do that on purpose, but I've seen a couple of occasions being a team manager where guys sometimes miss blocks if the quarterback ticked them off or something. But anyway, no, it's a good on him to do that. That's, you talk about building a culture. That's what you want to do when you're building something. If you want to be, the star player on a roster, or if you want to, be a leader, be a captain, that's the thing you have to do. And I probably wouldn't be a stretch to say that Dylan is probably pretty close to his uncle in terms of salary.
Yeah, probably. I would say maybe more. We'll see. But that's why he's a super important part of this program. And if David Sanders does wind up committing to Nebraska, then Dylan Raiola can be thanked for that, because that will be a huge reason why. I did want to mention before we forget that, so now that we've got this new rule that's allowing more coaches to coach on the field, Nebraska has announced kind of who all these guys are going to be. So just kind of a couple of names. We mentioned Ron Brown the other day. He'll be coaching fullbacks and receivers. Adam DiMichele will be in the secondary. Josh Martin, who coached tight ends last year, assistant special teams. Rashawn Melvin actually is a name I wanted to mention because he's a new hire from the NFL. He's played in the NFL for like a decade. So he's going to help in the secondary under John Butler. They just added a graduate assistant from San Diego State, who I believe, maybe played under not Tony White, but at least is going to have experience in that system. They kind of run a similar system there. So basically, a few extra coaches here and there for Nebraska. And Matt Rule said he wanted to kind of double up, at as many position groups as possible. And, I think that they've done that. Smart to take advantage of that rule. And it's nice to see that everybody's going to be on the same level playing field, because we know there was teams that were using analysts to coach when they weren't supposed to. I mean, Nebraska got in trouble for it, but every single program in college football has done it. So now people can do it and not have to worry about getting in trouble for it, which seemed like kind of a stupid. I mean, I get it, but it was kind of a stupid rule anyway.
What was even funnier was that they were suspended up until championship weekend. Nebraska was 4-8 that year, so we didn't even really affect us much at all. But I remember Rashawn Melvin for his cup of coffee with the Patriots back in 2015. I knew that name sounded familiar, but yeah. So finally, we can kind of have as many assistants, as we want. These guys, particularly Josh Martin. I was impressed with the job he did with the tight ends last year, especially given how quickly he had to be hired. And then Melvin is a former NFL guy, as you alluded to. He played for multiple teams, Carolina Panthers in 2021. So I think there is some familiarity there. And it's good to see them kind of round out this coaching staff. And the more assistants they have, the better, in my opinion.
And so here's a tweet too I'm looking at. So two of the three guys have been moved up into these roles, which are some that I didn't mention. Josh Brignuel. I'm not sure if that's exactly how you say that. And Jack Potenza. So they're moving into coaching roles. Potenza's the Jack linebacker. Brignuel, assistant linebackers coach. So they're both guys who played and kind of coached under Tony White. So those kind of getting some more of those disciples there. Then the new guy I mentioned from San Diego State is coming here as a graduate assistant, Tariq Thompson. So he played for Tony White in 2017. So another guy. So you're having a lot of guys that are familiar with this system. And I think that's a good thing. We know that Tony White, there's a strong chance he's going to move on after this year, depending how it goes, because he did say in his press conference on Tuesday that he was offered the job by USC. He didn't take it. So, I mean, I think it's going to take probably a head coaching job to get him out of here. But if he has a season if Nebraska has a season like I think they're going to have, and if you look at my bold predictions for HuskerBigRed.com, I predicted Nebraska to have a top 10 scoring defense this year in the country. I think last year they were like 13th. So maybe not that bold of a prediction, but if that does come to fruition, I don't see Tony White back here next year. So maybe he takes some of those guys with him. But at any rate, I think it's a good move to have a lot of familiarity in the coaching staff with the 3-3-5 defense.
And that's a good thing. I mean, as much as we love Tony White, we want to be a development school for coaches as well. I mean, we've talked about it, and we're kind of used to coaches leaving because they were fired, or just plain fired because they were fired. And now you have a coach that in Tony White who, has already taken down a USC job, which honestly, is kind of hard to do because it's USC, and especially given his West Coast ties in terms of recruiting. But anyway, now you're looking at a strong defensive unit once again. So I wouldn't be shocked if this was his last year in Nebraska, and I wouldn't be upset either. He's definitely earned the right to spread his wings. And I remember Matt Rule giving him an endorsement last fall to seek, coaching jobs. And I think that's a reflection on how Matt Rule views the coaches as people and not just, pawns in his proverbial chess game.
Yeah, even this spring, I mean, when it was happening, Matt Rule was, saying publicly people should hire Tony White. So I think that's a pretty cool move by Matt Rule. And that's what you want your coaches to be, hired other places. That means that you're winning. That means you're having success. That means you're developing players and sending them to the NFL. So I think that'll be, it will be not a good thing that Tony White leaves, but it'll be a sign of progress for Nebraska football. If you want to,
I don't think it's going to be a good thing. I know I said good thing, but I meant more good in terms of just not being a dead end for coaches.
Yeah, it's a sign of progress,
yeah.
right? I mean, if you like your Patriots, right? When they won all those Super Bowls, Romeo Crennel and Charlie Weiss got hired away, and that didn't help the Patriots, but that was still, a sign of what they were able to achieve. So I think
Josh McDaniels,
Josh fired, back. He should have maybe never left that job. Anyway, but yeah, and then you got John Butler, and there's multiple, I think, because Rob Dvorak, I think, could be in the mix for that defensive coordinator job too. I think it's going to be hard to keep it away from John Butler though, but at any rate, if Tony White does leave, Nebraska, I think, is well positioned. And I would say that about the offense too. You got, Satterfield. I think he's got a lot of work to do before he's talked about, going anywhere. But Glenn Thomas, if anything ever happens there, as long as Garrett McGuire is on staff, I think he's a really perfect fit to be an offensive coordinator eventually. I think he'd be really good at it. But I don't know. I feel like that eventually his dad's going to try to hire him away. But
I
at
was
any
gonna
rate,
say
those
he's
are
the one I'd be afraid of leaving, Garrett McGuire.
yeah. Because I mean, if your dad calls, that might be a tough one to pass up. But we'll see. I mean, the McGuires do have a lot of loyalty, I would say, to Matt Rule because they both coaches in that family have worked under him, and really Matt Rule's the one who gave I'm trying, is it Joey McGuire? I'm trying to think of his name.
Joe, yep.
So I mean, he's the one who brought him from high school football to Baylor, and eventually, so he wouldn't be a head coach right now today in college football at any rate without Matt Rule. So, but we'll see how that all works out. Was there anything that stood out to you with the press conference yesterday? Maybe outside of the Oregon Duck showing up, that was kind of weird.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess the Oregon Duck kind of wanted to make his appearance, and I know he was. I think he was flying somewhere else too. Yeah,
Kind of
just
crazy.
the way that
Trying to prevent the Isaiah Mosey flip, maybe.
Did we talk about that yet? Did we talk about that?
Yeah, we covered it quite a bit on Monday, so I'm just kind of
I'm
waiting for
excited
it to
about
actually
that.
happen.
I'm excited about that, but I think just kind of what stood out to me was just the level of confidence that Matt Rule has in his team and these coaching staffs and the fact that Tristan Alvano, Ed Foley talked about yesterday, is kind of tracking well for his return. He had a minor procedure done, and I'm wondering how he'll be able to recover from that procedure. Should be no big deal, but you always wonder for kickers in terms of the legs and how how those play out. And then you heard Foley talk about Alvano and how he was having a good spring and a good summer. So it was interesting to hear just some of the special teams. And Foley said that Isaiah Garcia Castaneda could emerge as a punt returner. And, even Ramir Johnson talked a little bit about earlier this week, having an ability or having the opportunity to return kicks as well. So you're seeing multiple guys kind of not know their roles in a negative way, but understand that there's opportunities at certain positions for them. And I'd love to see Ramir kind of carve out a role somewhere and be able to make an impact. And just on the Alvano front, I'm hoping for a better year from Alvano. I know he kind of struggled last year, but if he got his injury cleaned up, he got the procedure done, I'm curious to see what he can do this year.
Yeah, it will be interesting because I believe that they said he's not on the 120-man roster right now since he's hurt. So hopefully, he'll be able to get back or limited, I guess, at the start of camp. So there's John Hole, the transfer from Iowa Western is one name to know, and Nico Automanelli out of New Jersey. So those are a couple of guys that'll probably be holding that over until Tristan comes back. But I didn't hear anything that has me worried about him missing any games or anything. And yeah, he missed some kicks last year, but I like I've said, I have confidence in him. I think he's going to be just fine. And so it's not like I think if they really would have been worried, maybe they would have added. I know that they did add a guy technically via the transfer portal, but it's not like there were some big name kickers out there, and I didn't see Nebraska kicking the tires. I think you need to have depth in case something like this happens. And they probably knew when they added this Iowa Western kicker that, Tristan was going to have this surgery. I mean, probably didn't come up in the blink of an eye. So, it's unfortunate that both Tristan and Brian Buschini have had to deal with some injuries, because I think that they both have, high level ability when they're, when they're performing at their best. So hopefully we get that this year, for as many of those 12 games as possible.
Yeah, and special teams has always seemed to be an Achilles heel for Nebraska, especially over the last couple seasons. So hopefully this year will provide more consistency.
And it's going to be exciting this weekend, you guys. Saturday, right, is the first or the open practice, I guess, on where fans can go into Lincoln Memorial Stadium, pay your $25, bring your family. I'm sure there'll be plenty of media there. I'm sure we'll get to see plenty of highlights of everything happening. So that'll be kind of fun. I haven't seen the fall camp schedule, but maybe we'll have pads coming on that day. I don't know. It'd be kind of lame if you didn't even get to see the guys in pads, but we'll see, I guess, how that works out.
Maybe that's what they're saving it for. I mean, being at the first practice in pads would be cool. Pads are always fun.
That would be cool. And yeah, we'll see when the pads come on, man. It's exciting. I'm sure we'll have intel coming in here in the next few days. I'm going to put out a game-by-game prediction here shortly at HuskerBigRed.com in the next couple of days, so you guys can check that out. Yeah, it's going to be really exciting. What are you looking forward to the most about fall camp? What has you the most excited about fall camp, Danny?
This is going to be such a cliche answer, but the quarterback play and the quarterback battle. I mean, you think about what we could have done if we had better quarterback play last year. And just having a better room overall now, not just Dylan Raiola, but a better overall room, I think is going to make a big difference. And also, the running back room, honestly, is something I'm looking at too, because I'm hearing Emmett Johnson is making quite a name for himself in terms of establishing that top spot with Dante Dowdell not far behind. So to have that depth is going to be extremely important, and I'm curious to see if Emmett can, really kind of cement himself as a top running back and build off of the solid season he had last year with the action he had.
Yeah, I am interested to see if Ramir Johnson, though, and Gabe Ervin, they're supposedly healthy as well. Matt Rule said there's no restrictions on those guys, so we'll see what they can add to this mix. Ramir Johnson last year, he didn't play a ton before his injury, but he had that nice kickoff return against Minnesota, which was a key play. And I've said for years he's a dangerous receiver and runner. He's been underutilized. So if those two guys can stay healthy, and so you add Johnson and Gabe Ervin to Emmett Johnson and Dante Dowdell, then all of a sudden you've got a pretty deep running back room, and you've got a pretty deep receiver room, a pretty deep tight end room, a pretty good offensive line, and a pretty good quarterback, and a defense that, like I said, could be a top 10 scoring defense. So that's why, when you add all those things together, that's why people, are drinking the Kool-Aid this season with some trepidation, just because we've been hurt so many times. But it's like the Michael Scott meme, man. I'm ready to get hurt again. Let's go.
Overall, I'm just hoping for health throughout this camp, because injuries have not been our friend over the last couple of years, even just, camp injuries. So by and large, I think if you really wanted to say, Danny, what are you hoping for this camp? What are you looking for? Be as healthy as possible and make sure to get out of fall camp with as few injuries as possible.
That's always a big positive. That's a huge thing, and it's going to be fun to watch some of these position battles. We'll be updating you on all that stuff here in the coming days. We'll be back with another episode on Monday. We'll wrap up everything that's happened, over this first week of fall camp. Make sure you check out HuskerBigRed.com too. We'll have daily updates, everything that's going on. Check us out on social media as well. And as always, you guys, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.